I want to thank everybody for subscribing to my channel. You've been watching my content, and I really appreciate that. I want to step it up a level. I have a lot of different type of content coming out this month, so I am going to cater to the urban community more. That being said, we will compromise. I will provide urban content as long as you allow me to be able to make some good points and learning points that we can learn from. To kick this off, I want to start with a story about Edward Bryne. This is a cop that was shot in 1988 while he was standing guard, or sitting guard in this case, in front of someone's house. It was actually a witness's house. It was a witness to the witness people selling crack in his neighborhood, and Edward Bryne was supposed to go out there and just make sure nothing, he wasn't really harassed, and that turned into a whole murder, right? The book I'm reading from is called Cop Shot, right? So there's a lot I want to discuss with you guys. So I guess we can do a few videos, and then I might do a live in between for us to have an actual discussion to see how you feel. However, that doesn't mean you don't drop a comment. Continue to hit the like button. Continue to drop some comments, right? So that being said, let's go ahead and start this here story. I'm going to start on page 6, but you guys can start from wherever you want to start from if you decide to read the book. The drive in from Massapequa took 30 minutes. Rookie finished getting dressed at his locker. They called him Rookie. That's what they call Edward Bryne. His father was also on the police force, but his father had retired. He wasn't big enough to get onto any sports team or anything like that, but he did take the test to be an officer, and he was recruited. Rookie finished getting dressed at his locker, putting on his bulletproof vest, police shield, and gun belt. The cop's gun, a Strum Ruger .38 caliber revolver, fit snugly in a black JP holster. He had 6 live rounds in the gun and 12 additional bullets and a pair of Cobra speed loaders. In June of 1986, another rookie, Scott Goodell, had been killed during a shootout with a crack dealer. The dealer, a Jamaican immigrant who had entered the country illegally, had shot the cop in the head as he tried frantically to reload his gun. 3 bullets in Goodell's gun had misfired. Now everyone carried speed loaders. Rookie's holster also included a pouch for the modern cop's closest friend, his ballpoint pen. Different pouches and loops on the utility belt housed 2 pairs of Smith & Wesson handcuffs, a flashlight, a red Swiss Army knife, a nightstick, and a whistle. He paused at the front desk to salute the desk sergeant on the way out of the precinct. Everyone would later remember that Edward Bryne had looked bright, trim, and clean. Hold on. I got some pictures here. So let's get to this joint right here. Good. All right. Rookie arrived at the guard post at the corner of Inwood Street and 107th Avenue at 12:15 a.m. Anything up? He asked Police Officer Nancy Steffen. A battered yellow car had passed Steffen earlier, but she did not think it important enough to mention. It's dead, Officer Steffen told Rookie. He climbed into the empty blue and white, a Chevy Impala. NYPD Radio Motor Patrol number 1041, and placed his black leather-bound department issue memo book on the dashboard. The car was a warm sanctuary against the bitter morning, Normally, the block will be swarming with crack dealers, but the code has scattered them. The cop took off his gray leather gloves and placed them on the seat along with his flashlight, portable radio, and Kodak high intensity. Wait, that cannot be correct. Sorry. I apologize for that. And Kodak Instacamera. The patrol was parked about 10 feet behind the stop sign, facing the witness's home on the southeast corner of Inwood Street and 107th Avenue. Positioned under a high-intensity street lamp, Rookie had unobstructed view of the 3-story gray wooden home 90 feet away. The darkened neighborhood. Let's change pictures. The darkened neighborhood was filled with detached wooden homes and narrow one-way streets. The homes were almost entirely broken and ruined. The sidewalks cracked and heaving. The neighborhood smelled of burned wood. This pocket of South Jamaica looked like it had been transplanted from the Old South. White suburban cops had a nickname for this locality. They called it Tobacco Road. An empty plastic white dog cage filled the back seat of Burns' car. A reflection of the cage filled Rookie's rearview mirror. Not that it mattered much. No one would be stupid enough to make a move on a witness with a cop on the block. Still, he positioned his side view mirror just to be safe. The witness' name was Arjun, a Guyanese immigrant. On the night of November 9th, 1987, Arjun had looked out his window and seen several crack dealers selling crack on his corner. At 6:15 p.m., he had dialed 911 to report the ongoing drug sales, but 2 patrolmen, George Rapetti and Angelo Carbone, arrived at the corner, found nothing, and called in the report as unfounded. 30 minutes later, Arjun called back saying the dealers had returned. This time, as Rapetti returned on the block, he saw a kid, Yusuf Abdul Qadir, 20, drop a paper bag. The cop found 6 vials of crack in the bag. Detectives arrived on the scene just as Qadir, whose nickname was Joe Sharp, was being arrested for criminal possession of a controlled substance. The detectives overheard the central dispatcher directing the cops to a tree. Several kids, including Joe Sharp's boss, Robert Webster, were standing around listening to the transmission on the cops' portable radios. It was evident to everyone, the detectives later remembered, that someone inside Arjun's home had given the young crack dealers up. The cops left the block with their prisoner and his $30 worth of crack. At around 4:25 a.m., Arjun awakened by a barking dog. He looked out the window and saw 2 young men he later identified as Robert Webster, 18, and Claude Johnson, 28. Webster was on his lawn, holding a firebomb. Arjun watched as Webster tossed the flaming bottle through his front window. Arjun put the fire out with his hands, burning his hands, and tossed what was left of the burning bottle back out of the window. Then Arjun dialed 911 again. The witness drove around with the cops for about 20 minutes, finally spotting Johnson, who was promptly arrested. Arjun returned home at about 6:20 a.m. About 10 minutes after the cops left, Arjun looked out his window and spotted Webster on his lawn again. The crack dealer tossed 2 more flaming bottles at the house, but this time both of them bounced off. Again, Arjun telephoned the police. Events were not going well for police witnesses in South Jamaica. All right, I just want to stop there. And now I want to have a little discussion with you guys, because we have to make sense of this. Because I think this where all of this real nigga talk comes from. What is a real one? Now, let's just break this story down. It sounds like Arjun might have owned that house. But regardless, let's start here. Do you think he was in the wrong for looking out his window and seeing people selling crack in his neighborhood and calling the police? Or would you say he should have minded his business? Now, I know it's some ignorant people like Zip with the Drip would say, because he glamorizes toxicity, impoverishment. This is where he comes from. So I expect a guy like that to say something and make it sound cool, like, yo, you gotta mind your business. However, this is where you live. This is your community. Do you watch it without attempting? Do you watch it erode away? Do you watch it just... Because we're talking about crack cocaine here. So if you're not dealing it, you're using it. And these zombies are coming to your neighborhood now just to buy it. And they are desperate. Trust me, I should know. Not that I was on crack. That's another story for another time, why I said trust me, why I should know. I'll tell you now. You had some very... I don't want to call them regular people because we're all regular people. But to watch someone that goes from like... before they were smoking crack, they had a job, they were gorgeous, and then all of a sudden they started doing desperate things. I think somebody asked me one time when they was interviewing me, did I ever sleep with a crackhead? Did I ever F a crackhead? The answer is yes, I have. There was a pretty girl. She was from Edenwald Projects, but she used to come to Mount Vernon and deal with this white guy. He used to be, I think he was like a doctor. They lose everything over time. She was a nurse. She eventually lost everything. Yo, she got so desperate. She definitely let me pipe that joint on the steps for like 10 cash. It was crazy. She walked away. She did whatever she did with the money. When I seen her, she was crying. She realized this is a shell of herself. I gave her shit. I always wanted to hit. I don't care that I don't care that you're doing. I don't care. You know, this is a young version of me. This is young me. I had to be 19, maybe 20, but I want to say 19. I didn't care. Looking at it today, you know, I'm gonna be honest with you, and I want to have this conversation with you guys. Was Arjun wrong? I don't think he was wrong, but it clearly had consequences. And what was going on with them arresting the guys and these guys being right back outside? This is what these are the things I like to teach about. So when I'm bringing up stuff like the 1965 Law Enforcement Assistance Act, this is the federal funding that gave to local police stations, right? But the first year when the police stations, police stations used it to clean up the cities, they didn't get as much money. So what they did after that is they kind of let crime go a little bit so that they would get the money so that they could have the metrics to show the federal government, hey, we really need the money. Because the more arrests they had, then it kind of guaranteed that they would get the same amount of money or more. This is why I try to explain to people over here on my channel. nobody was really watching. They only watching now because I'm destroying Prince. I'm only destroying Prince because of Zip with the drip, because he's an idiot and he pissed me off. But I cannot get away from my true purpose, which is to unite and to teach. Right? So I wanted to look at, because a lot of people still going to think if Pappy Mason was free today, they would call him a real nigga. Right? But you got to understand, these were young kids who had become controlled and obsessed. They had to be controlled by the money they were starting to make. And there was no controlling them at that point. It was like you let the devil loose. So we are going to get more into this story. Let me just see if there was one more thing I want to discuss before I end this video. I think I spoke about. It just bugged me out. You know, the thing about what we read so far, it just bugged me out that this dude, Robert Webster, was let out. He was arrested, it seemed like twice in one night, and he was let back out. Yo, they went and got the witness and drove around with him and arrested the guy again. It says he looked out the window, saw two young men later identified as Robert Webster and Claude Johnson. Webster, who was on his lawn holding a firebomb. You know, he watched them. They went and got him. Dude was right back out in the street doing the same thing. So they did not have any fear. So my question, you know, I say this in my videos, are these the type of people you really want running your community? They will, as long as people, stand up citizens, black people who believe in civility and not nigga shit. We need to unite and stand up and then make their behavior abnormal. You see, the radio stations and the marketers and the videos and these, they're not owned by us, right? The people who put out these images and perceptions, these are a different group of people, and I don't need to say who they are, but it's not black people. They control the frequency. They just need some willing black participant people to sell us out and say, I don't mind being your Huckleberry, and like, come on, hurry up, we about to push the button, we about to record. So in fact, I do believe we are part of a, not only just a psyop, but right now there's something called the MK Ultra hearings. You can go look up. I think July 3rd these hearings kicked off. So you can go. These are hearings about people being brainwashed. How the United States used different tactics to actually brainwash certain people, including the Manson family, Charles Manson. Whether they used it with LSD, whether they used different techniques to hypnotize people, these people were entrained, their brains were entrained, and they were, if we want to say brainwashed, hypnotized, whatever, all to test to see if a human could be altered, if his behavior, if his thinking could be altered. And they got their answer. Listen, this video is getting a little bit lengthy, but don't worry, come back on part 2. This is just the first video that we're doing. This is a trial run. I want to see how y'all react to this. Tell me if y'all like it, and we're gonna keep these here coming, right? But I got more. I got so much content coming that they can't mess with me. So you might as well hit the subscribe button, because you're gonna miss out. I got a whole ton of content coming. All right. My name is Jamel Saladin. This is Society, past, present, future. Hit the hype button. Peace out.